Welcome to today's readings by 5 talented authors. My name is Jody Zaremby. Some of you might know me by my pen name, Jazzy Mitchell. I'm the publisher at Launchpoint Press, and I've partnered with Desert Palm Press to give you these live stream events, and I hope you enjoy them. Before I introduce you to the writers, I want to let you know that you can go ahead and comment or question during the live stream, and we will see them. So please do participate if you're watching us live today. Now, I'm excited to welcome 5 wonderful writers today with me. We have from Launchpoint Press, E.J. Kindred, Launchpoint Press, Reba Birmingham, Desert Palm Press, Jane Alden, Desert Palm Press, Ellen Hoil, and special guest, Caren Werlinger. Welcome to all of you. I'm so excited to listen to your excerpts today. And instead of telling you how awesome you all are, I'm just going to let everyone see for themselves and listen and comment. And what we'll do is we'll just have each person read, and then we'll go ahead and if we have time, we'll go ahead and ask you some questions, get to know you a little bit more, and hopefully we will receive some comments and questions to give to you also. Let's start with Desert Palm Press, Ellen Hoil. Ellen, let us know what you're reading today, set up the scene for the excerpt, and let us hear your talent today.
Hi, my name's Ellen Hoil. I'm an author with Desert Palm Press, as you heard. Today I'm going to be reading from my second novel, Traumatic Love. This is chapter 12. It's the story of Nydia and Joe, who one is a doctor and Joe is a police officer. And their tumultuous relationship runs throughout the book. And this chapter is chapter 12. They've been dating for a little while, and this is part of the tumultuousness that comes around. So I hope you like it. Patient was unconscious on scene and hasn't regained consciousness since, the EMT said as she and her partner jumped out of the ambulance with the gurney. They followed Nydia into the trauma room. His BP is 80 by palp, heart rate is fast and thready at 160. He's breathing on his own, though respiration is labored. He has multiple contusions on his head and torso, no report of the weapon used. His right eye is swollen and examination shows fixed and dilated. The other has normal responses. We collared, intubated him, started IV, and then ran. The team moved the patient to the trauma bed while listening to the EMT's notes. Nydia began her assessment. The fact he hadn't regained consciousness worried her. Were the police there? Yes, but no police were with us or following, the EMT Nydia knew as Dowd said. Why the hell not? Never mind, I don't have time for that. Wait outside, I want to talk to you two when I'm done. Nydia began running through the trauma evaluation. She watched as Jordan, one of the respiratory techs, took the ventilator to the patient's tube. Nydia then checked his breathing. His lungs sounded clear of any fluid and his respiration was good. Okay, Mike, run his blood gases. Trudy, give me the results when he has them. What are his O2 levels, Jordan? O2 is 98%. Nydia began looking at the major bruises on his torso and gut. They resembled boot impressions. None of his ribs felt fractured by palpitation. She began looking for more external injuries. Doctor, I have the blood gas results. They're within normal limits. However, the results of the CBC indicate low hematocrit. Damn it. It sounds like he's losing blood somewhere. Someone get me the ultrasound. I got it, Mike said as he handed her the wand. Nydia's brows furrowed in concentration as she looked at the monitor. Looks like his spleen is the cause. Someone call surgery. I want him in the OR stat. Mike, type and cross-match him. Janet, get the IV fluids pushed as fast as you can. Starting to push, Janet said. What are his vitals now? Nydia asked. Trudy called him out, and Nydia was satisfied the patient was stable enough to make the trip. Okay, people, let's get him upstairs. Everyone grabbed part of the table and wheeled the patient to the elevator. Once upstairs, Nydia handed the patient off to the surgical team. Now she could focus on her anger and fume to herself. Where are the police, damn it? Someone from IPV should have been here, or at least in a uniform. Nydia walked back to the ER seething. Her jaw was so tight her muscles were getting sore. The EMT stood up faster than usual when she approached them. Tell me what happened on scene. Why is there no one from the Intimate Partner Violence Unit here? Detective Powers O'Reilly, or a detective or officer assigned by them, is supposed to bring in all victims and file reports based on my findings. When neither of the EMTs spoke, Nydia put her hands on her hips and barked, "Well, tell me." The female EMT Dowd shifted on her feet. When we got on scene, 2 uniformed officers and a detective were there. I didn't recognize them and didn't get a chance to catch their names. Now that I think about it, I don't think they ever gave them. Did you catch their names, Derek? No, Colleen, I didn't. When one of the uniformed officers told the detective that the patient's boyfriend was the assailant, I asked the detective if he wanted to ride along with us to the hospital. The detective said, and I quote, "I don't give a damn. I don't have time for fucking queers and their drama, let alone this shit. Let them kill themselves for all I care. I got better things to do. Just clean up the mess and get them out of here. I'm sorry for the language, Dr. Rogers. I remembered it because the comment was so harsh and cruel. After that, we only had time to scoop and run." Nydia's anger rose. She glared at Colleen and Derek. The 2 MTs looked at each other and took a step back. Nydia realized she was furious at the wrong people. "I'm sorry, guys. It wasn't your fault. Get back to work. I'll handle the police issues and find out what is going on with this." She watched them walk down the hall as she pulled her phone from her pocket. She stepped outside of the ER for privacy. Joe answered on the second ring. "Hey, you missed me already?" "No, I don't," Nydia said. Okay, did something come up? Do you need to cancel tonight?" "I'm calling on an official matter, detective. As hospital liaison between your unit and the hospital, I demand to know why a victim was brought in here without an officer or detective from your unit accompanying him." She held the phone tight in her grip. "Also, vicious derogatory remarks were made about the victim on scene by a detective. He didn't identify himself, but I assume you can find out and take appropriate actions. I will not stand for this." Before Joe had a chance to respond, Nydia disconnected the call and shoved the phone into her coat pocket in frustration and anger, and also a sense of loss. She took a deep breath to try and calm herself, and ran a trembling hand through her hair and re-entered the ER. Nydia realized she hadn't mentioned dinner. "I'm too angry right now to think about it. I'll text her when I'm done and cancel." Nydia felt a sense of profound disappointment in Joe and the rest of her team. "I don't know why I'm shocked. I had hoped and prayed Joe was different, but deep down they're all the same. All cops are." A few seconds later, her cell phone rang. She looked at the display and saw it was Joe. Nydia turned off the volume and let it go to voicemail. That's the end of chapter 12.
Wow, that was great. It's a lot of tension right there, and you can tell that it's really gearing up to a confrontation of some sort. Thanks for sharing.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And for those people who haven't read Ellen's works yet, I hope you'll give it a shot, because this one in particular has gotten great reviews, so you should certainly try it out. All right. You're welcome. Okay, next we're going to listen to another Desert Palm Press author, Jane Alden. She's reading from her work in progress, The Queen's Eye. Jane, tell us more about your project and set up the scene.
Well, The Queen's Eye is a sequel to The Crystal's Curse. And the main characters are an archaeologist, Dr. Cass Stillwell, and her assistant, Ari Morgan. And in the Queen's Eye, they are pursuing the missing eye of the bust of Nefertiti. The beautiful life-size bust that everybody's familiar with is so gorgeous that we often overlook the fact that the bust is really missing the left eye. And when it was discovered in 1917, the theory was that it was never meant to have a left eye, that it was to be a model, so they didn't want to repeat the eye. But Cass's theory is that the eye did exist and that it's just waiting for her to find it. And she wants to use it as a bargaining chit to get the bust back to Egypt from where it is now in Germany. So they're on the trail. Cass and Ari are on the trail of finding the Queen's Eye when we take up the story. The next morning at dawn, we started for Cairo in Alfie's little van. It was still dark on the West Bank. Beyond the tree line, balloons lifted tourists over the Valley of the Kings. They had set out at dawn to avoid the turbulence of warm air later in the day. The fires that heat the air under the balloons' colorful canopies burned bright orange against the brown hills. Cass sat in the van's front seat beside Alfie, and I shared the back seat with gas cans filled with extra fuel for the 8-hour drive. Cass and Alfie kept up a low-level buzz of conversation in the front seat. The van didn't have air conditioning, so all the windows were down. The hot desert wind buffeted my eardrums and made it impossible to make out their words. I snuggled into the corner of the seat and watched a flock of migrating birds lift off the river's surface. They were headed south to the enormous man-made lake at the new Aswan Dam. They rose in unison like a giant billowing white blanket. I wondered how they elected the head bird to signal it was the exact time to move on. We had the highway to ourselves except for a few donkey carts piled high with sugar cane and an occasional rattle-trap truck hauling camels to market. I felt sorry for the majestic animals packed nose to tail in the tight space. The road was straight as an arrow as far as the eye could see. I thought about something Gran said once describing the drive across the panhandle of Texas. It's so flat, you can watch your dog run away from home for a week. I drifted off to sleep thinking about Gran and Mom in their little house in Beaufort, North Carolina. After some time, no idea how long, I jerked awake. Something had changed. We were moving a lot faster. Cass and Alfie had stopped chatting. Cass was turned all the way around in her seat, staring out the back window. Alfie kept glancing in the rearview mirror. A car lagged behind us, keeping a steady pace, a black Range Rover. Alfie took his gun out of his waistband and handed it to Cass. Cass checked the revolver for bullets. There are 2 men. The passenger has a rifle. We'll be outgunned. We can't outrun them. I'm going to slow down and see what they do. He slowed to half speed. The Range Rover backed off to maintain 4 or 5 car lengths. Alfie speeded up, and they matched us. Ari, take the cap off one of the gas cans and hand it up front. There's a road flare under the seat. Do you see it? I passed the gas can to Cass and found the flare. Do you know how to light it? Take the white cap off the end. When the time comes, I'll give the word. Use the cap to strike the flare like a match. He pointed down the road. We're coming up on a camel truck. Once we get just past it, things will happen fast, so hold on. Alfie stomped on the accelerator. The little van shuddered and lurched ahead. The passenger in the Range Rover stuck his rifle out the side window and fired a shot. Alfie swerved across the center line. We whizzed past the truck, and Alfie cut the wheel hard to the right. We flew off the highway. The van tipped on its 2 left wheels and balanced for a heart-stopping instant before bouncing back on all 4s and coming to rest up to its axle in sand. The camel truck driver hit his brakes and skidded across the road to a stop on the opposite shoulder, causing the gangly animals to fall into each other in a tangle of legs. The whole mass of them started braying their protest. The Range Rover pulled off the road, and 2 guys with rifles jumped out. Cass, Alfie, and I ducked behind the van. Light the flare! I struck it like Alfie told me, and thank goodness it caught the first time. He flung the open gas can like a shot put toward the Range Rover. It landed on the roof. Alfie counted to 5 and tossed the flare next to the gas can. The car roared into flames. The gunman stumbled across the road to the camel truck and pulled the driver from the cab. They U-turned and took off toward Luxor, with the camels in the back still bellowing and trying to scramble to their feet. Cass went to help the truck driver, and Alfie opened the back of the van and pulled out 2 shovels. He handed me one, and we began clearing sand away from the back wheels. How did you know that would work? Alfie wiped his brow with his sleeve and grinned. I saw it once in an American movie. We gave the truck driver a ride to the next village. He spouted a running monologue in Arabic that sounded like curses against the men who took his camels. He kept saying, Al Mafia, Al Mafia. What is he saying? He recognized the men as part of a gang that steal and traffic in black market antiquities. He is entreating the gods to send their wrath down on the crooks. Cass lit a cigarette, shielding the flame from wind blowing in her window. He calls them the Mafia. Is that who they are? The guy on the train, the sniper at the dig, and these two? Most likely. Illegal trading in antiquities is a huge business, perhaps billions each year. Modern Egypt is built on top of ancient Egypt, so people can dig in their own courtyards and discover treasures. Then there are organized gangs that swoop in and loot dig sites and even museums. It's impossible to guard them all. The booty is passed on to the lucrative international black market through the country's ports and porous borders. Why doesn't the government do something about it? The truck driver interrupted. Mafia. Some people accuse the authorities of having a hand in the process, even the police and military. Yeah, remember Lord Dices bribed the Minister of Antiquities for a dig permit the last time we were in Luxor. You don't think Detective Inspector Salim is in on it, do you? Hard to know. So we're in the middle between Hitler Youth, who want to restore Nefertiti's eye and thereby the glory of the Third Reich, and the Egyptian Mafia, who want to sell the eye to the highest bidder. Cass blew out smoke and nodded. Nefertiti's eye would mean a huge payday for the gang, millions, and restoring the bust will shower enormous attention and prestige on the country that possesses her. Maybe the truck driver was right. Maybe we needed the wrath of the gods for reinforcements.
Wow, it was great. It kind of reminds me of a female-driven Indiana Jones with the adventure and, you know, finding the antiquities and everything. That was great. I'm looking forward to reading that once you're finished.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. So next up, we have Launchpoint Press writer EJ Kindred. EJ, thanks for being here today. And go ahead and tell us about the project you're reading from and set up the scene for us.
So I'm going to read from a work in progress called Family Secrets. It's the second book in a series of basically an amateur sleuth series where the main character is named Annie Velasquez. In the first book, Annie's father had died, and the person who was found in a fire, actually, and the person who was found to be responsible for the fire turned out to be Annie's girlfriend, Nikki. And then Nikki was sometime later found dead in downtown Portland. So Family Secrets opens up where Annie's gone to run an errand. She and her brother have decided to rebuild the dad's bicycle shop, which is where the fire was. And she's running an errand to pick up building supplies, and she goes into a coffee shop and she comes face to face with Nikki. So of course, being the amateur sleuth type that she is, she has to try to find her. This scene takes place about a third of the way into the book. She keeps going back to this coffee shop to try to say, Nikki was there once, she's going to come back, even though the homicide detective on the case, whose name is Beth O'Brien, tells her to knock it off and just let them do their job. She can't help herself. And she winds up tripping over her own feet, basically. So that's what this scene is from. It's a work in progress, and I've been making revisions, so this might be a little rough, but here it is. Not wanting to face Friday afternoon traffic, I took my time with my coffee. Brad and his crew wouldn't be at the shop by the time I got back anyway, so I could cool my heels for as long as I wanted. I sipped my latte and tried to decide what to do next. But before I knew it, I slipped into a state where I could look out the window without really seeing anything. My internal monologue had taken over, whirling in circles like an out-of-control carousel. Without warning, someone put an arm across my shoulders and held me close, as if greeting me as a good friend. Before I could turn my head, my assailant leaned in close and spoke in a low voice, close enough that I could felt her warm breath against my skin. Tell me why I shouldn't arrest your ass right here and now. She released me and sat down in the chair on the other side of the small table. Beth O'Brien smiled at me as friends do when they meet for coffee. I wasn't able to act nearly as cool as she did. Before I could think, I burst out, "Holy shit," and clapped a hand over my mouth. She raised one perfectly arched eyebrow. Before my friends met her, I told them Beth could pass for a model on her worst day. She was always beautiful, with a heart-shaped face and chocolate brown eyes, framed by perfectly wavy blonde hair. But this was too much. She wore tight jeans and a wrap-style blouse that appeared to be silk and clung to her shape as if it had been custom made for her. The necklace she wore of blue topaz and citrine stones set in gold accented the pale lavender fabric. "Sorry," I said, trying to cover my embarrassment. "You startled me." "Do you like my necklace?" She lifted it away from her skin as if to show it off. "It's new." Taken aback, I hesitated to speak, but decided to keep it light. In a joking tone, I said, "Are you flirting with me?" She smiled again and shook her head. "No, I'm making nice for the audience." In a lower voice, she said, "Your little outburst has everyone looking at us." "Entirely your fault for sneaking up on me. How did you know I was here?" "I didn't. I'm meeting a friend for dinner. I'm early, so I decided to stop in for a nice coffee." "I didn't know you were here until I came inside." She got up, collected her cup from the barista, and retook her seat. "Why are you here?" I told her about my errand for Brad. I did my best to look out the windows and not gawk at my companion across the table, but the deep V-shaped neckline of her blouse didn't make it easy. I also tried not to think about who she might be spending time and dinner with. To my eyes, she was dressed for a date, not a casual meal with a friend. It was Friday, after all. "Annie," she finally said in a skeptical voice, "what the hell are you thinking? What's really going on?" I was fairly sure she didn't really want to learn what I had on my mind at the moment, but I was also confident about what she did want to know. She gazed at me until my inner resolve crumbled. "I can't help it. She was here, and I keep hoping she'll come back. When I'm in the neighborhood, I come in and I show them this." I handed her the photo of Nikki. "They put it up for me." I gestured toward the flyer on the bulletin board. She drank some coffee, narrowing her eyes at me over the rim of her cup. "You have to stop this nonsense. If you're right," she held up a hand when I started to speak. "If you're right and she sees you, what do you think will happen?" "I don't know. We'd talk and maybe I'd find out what was going on with her." "No, what would most likely happen is she'd disappear. She'd see you from outside or across the room and turn right around and be gone. And then we'd never know what happened and the case would never be closed." "But she called me," I protested. "Doesn't it mean she wants to talk?" "Did she answer when you called her back?" "No, as you know perfectly well." I was trying to avoid sounding defensive and failing. "What am I supposed to do? She's alive. She called me, and what? I shrug my shoulders and say, 'Oh, well,' and get on with my life?" "Of course not. You're supposed to do what you've already done. You've told Ted and me about it, and now you let us do our jobs. We're the experienced one here who can be objective and follow the evidence. It's completely understandable you want to find her, but I'm asking you to stop." I felt foolish. You're right, of course. You'd think after that last episode I'd have learned I have no business acting like some kind of half-assed detective. I'm sorry, I didn't think of it that way. The event I mentioned was my misguided attempt to discover who had killed the doctor I cleaned house for in Charbonneau. She smiled reassuringly. "I know you're smart enough and motivated enough to do this kind of work if you wanted to. You just lack training and experience, and—" she paused long enough to tilt one extended hand from side to side, "and maybe just the tiniest bit of common sense." Embarrassed, I said, "Thank you, sort of." And then I remembered, "Have you talked with Patrick today?" "No, but I took most of the day off." I suddenly wished I hadn't spoken. Here she'd busted me for being in amateur sleuth mode, and now I had to admit she was right. My shoulders slumped while she waited, me and my big mouth. "Okay, here it is. After that debacle in Charbonneau, the one that almost got you killed," she said, "that little kerfluffle?" "Yeah, that one." I couldn't help but roll my eyes. After I got home, a local reporter wrote a news story about me, and it refuses to die. Since then, one or two people have asked me to find someone for them. Once I explained the situation, they dropped it. It happened again last week. A server at a sushi restaurant I like asked me to find her missing girlfriend. And what did you say? The same as the others. I told her the newspaper story was bogus, but she insisted. So to make her leave me alone about it, I said I'd do an online search, but I made it too clear to her that I wasn't promising anything. Beth shook her head slightly. Annie, really? I know, I'm an idiot. I signed up for one of those websites where you can get, oops, I just lost my page. Where you can get information about people. I didn't find anything about the missing girlfriend. Okay, and you're telling me this why exactly? I paid for the website, so I put Nikki's name in. She waited. Did you know she has a criminal record? The site shows 3 addresses for drug possession and intent to distribute. The dates were from before we met, and I knew nothing about it. I paused long enough to take a sip of my now lukewarm coffee. I don't know how accurate those sites are, so I asked Patrick to call you to see if you knew about any records she had. I thought it might be important because of the chemicals that burned down my dad's bike shop. I didn't add, and killed my beloved father. And I hope that didn't run over because I didn't time it.
No, that was perfect, CJ. Thank you for sharing that. It looks like this is just more questions than answers at this point. And Annie, she's just getting herself in hot water left and right.
Yeah, she's a little out of control most of the time. And yeah.
Absolutely. Maybe a little too smart for her own good. She keeps on thinking and trying to figure things out.
And doesn't have enough sense
Thanks for sharing that with us.
Yeah, thank you. You're welcome.
Yeah. All right. Next up, we have a special guest today, Caren Werlinger. She's going to read something from a project she's working on right now. So, Caren, thanks for being with us. And go ahead and set up the scene and let us know what you're working on.
Jody, thank you so much. I want to thank you and Lee at Desert Palm Press for inviting me to be part of this reading tonight. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Caren Werlinger. I'm an indie author writing under my own imprint, Corgan Publishing. The book I'm working on right now is the 4th book in a series set on a fictional island off the coast of Maine called Little Sister Island. In the last book, the 3rd one, titled The New Shore, we met a new character, Erin Grant. She is a cousin to one of the main characters who has carried through all of the books thus far, Kathleen Halloran. Kathleen's family was shattered a long time ago by the drowning of her brother. And in this particular book, the aunt that she has never met has just recently returned to the island. This is Erin's mom. Erin and her dad tricked her mother into coming back to Little Sister, where she has not been since she was 17. But her presence, Moira Grant's presence on the island, is causing some ripples in the island's energy. So the scene we're going to be hearing from tonight is where some of the island's inhabitants are trying to figure out what to do about this. And this book does not have a firm title yet, but the working title at this point is Like Frail Boats on the Sea. So here's the scene. The door to the back room swung open and Siobhan stepped inside. She flapped her rain jacket and produced a book she had tucked beneath it for protection. Nice night for a walk, she said with a wry smile as she set the book on the table and draped her jacket over the back of a chair. What's this? Kathleen asked, tapping the book. My grandmother's journal, Siobhan said, or at least one of them, from the right time period. What time period? Kathleen felt completely lost as Rebecca and Louisa both nodded. Can someone fill me in? We think, Louisa began in her patient teacher voice, that we've figured out why Moira left Little Sister all those years ago. Really? Kathleen leaned forward. How? What did you figure out? I started digging through these, Siobhan said, picking up the narrative. My grandmother journaled pretty regularly, and she made notes of any unusual activity. Kathleen frowned, glancing around the table. What kind of unusual activity? The magical kind. Despite Siobhan's matter-of-fact tone, Kathleen snorted. Then she noticed that Louisa and Rebecca weren't laughing. Clodagh would have felt she needed to train any young ones with power, Rebecca explained. Like taking an apprentice, Siobhan clarified. She flipped the book open to a page she'd marked. So I began looking for any mention of odd occurrences from when Moira was a teenager. I recall, Louisa said, how quickly she seemed to change. One day she was gregarious, talkative, a typical teenage girl. The next she was withdrawn, surly, secretive. The latter sounds more typical to me, Kathleen noted. Louisa smiled. True, but I was usually able to get my teenage students to open up. Nothing I said got through to Moira. Well, Siobhan said, bending over the page, my grandmother wrote that she felt ripples, disturbances in the island's balance, always at night. She guessed that whoever was doing it, it was happening in her dreams. Why in her dreams? Kathleen asked. It often begins that way, Siobhan said. In sleep, our inhibitions are lessened, and any nascent powers begin to manifest, often when a girl begins to menstruate. What's that got to do with anything? Kathleen asked, feeling more gullible with each question. It's part of the coming into our womanhood, Louisa said. The same thing happened 2 springs ago, remember? That quake we all felt? No males or young girls felt it. It's the same thing. Oh, yeah. Kathleen nodded toward the book. So, what did you find? This. Siobhan pulled the book closer and read. I'm nearly certain that the one I've been feeling is Moira Halloran. I passed her on her way to school this morning, and I could feel the power emanating from her. Chaotic, angry, confused. I will try to talk to her privately soon. Kathleen opened her mouth to ask more questions, but Rebecca held up a finger. Siobhan turned the page and continued. My talk with Moira did not go well. I offered to teach her to channel and control her power, but she's frightened by it. She denied knowing what I was talking about, but we both know the truth. Now I must decide whether to say anything to Maisie about this or let Moira tell her. Kathleen sat up straighter. Did she? Did she speak with my grandmother? Siobhan closed the book. I don't know. Those were the only entries I could find pertaining to Moira. I think she must not have. Louisa stared at her clasped hands. I recall Maisie telling Ollie and me that she was having problems with Moira, but we never understood what she meant. Was my grandmother, a witch? Kathleen asked. No, said Louisa, but I know she would have been accepting, proud even, to know that Moira had power. Kathleen stared at the others gathered around the table. Does she still have it? I mean, is she going to go nuclear or something while she's back here? They all turned to Siobhan, who shook her head slowly. I can't tell. There's been something, ripples in the island's energy, that I now know began when they arrived. She tilted her head as if listening. But I've no way of knowing if it's coming from Moira. So what do we do about this? Kathleen asked. I assume this meeting tonight is to try and decide a plan of action. Does it even matter? I mean, if Moira has sworn off using or developing this gift, is there anything to be gained by bringing it up? I think there is, Siobhan said. By denying her power, she's denying a piece of herself. Even if she has no intention of embracing it, at the very least, she shouldn't deny it. Seems a bit late for that, Kathleen muttered. It's a kind of lie she's told herself most of her life, Rebecca observed. She won't be whole until she accepts this part of who she is. So we're going to do some kind of magical intervention? Kathleen asked dubiously. Something like that. Siobhan nodded decisively. Why don't we begin at the Halloran cottage, Louisa suggested. That's where she was born, where she lived when things started. Okay. Kathleen stood and reached for her jacket. But I'm out of here if flying monkeys show up.
I'm here. Sorry. Well, it was great. I love that whole concept of magical intervention too. That's great. So you said this is the fourth in the series?
Yes.
The fourth book. Excellent. I'm glad. I can't wait for it to come out. I know there are a lot of people that are waiting for that. So thanks for sharing that with us today. And last but not least, we're going to be listening to a reading from Reba Birmingham, whose fourth book, Circle of Stones, is coming out for the Hercynian Forest series. That's coming out next week. Oh my God, Reba, tell us more.
Okay. All right. That's my support crew back there. Yeah, the Hercynian Forest series is a fantasy about two women, Panda and Mitzi Fowler, that live in the little town of Maryville, but their lives have been forever changed because they have intersected with this other universe where magic is how people get things done. So the scene that I'm going to read today is from book 4. There is a lot of excitement in book 4, but the scene I'm going to read you is relatively calm. It is from the very beginning because I don't want to give away any spoilers. We're in the Fowler's kitchen in Maryville, California. This is Panda speaking. I sat in our newly restored kitchen in the middle of a conversation with my friend and protector, Elsa, a German elf. My cat, Brutus, slept fitfully in his bed on the floor near my feet. I surveyed the new paint and flooring while Elsa cleaned the counter. A mere month before, in this very kitchen, Wolfram, the leader of an evil sect of monks, had attacked me and Brutus. The surprise attack happened after a showdown at St. Olaf's, where Wolfram blamed me for ruining his plans to purify Maryville for his creepy cult, Lupus Imperium. Talk about accidental heroes. My wife, Mitzi Fowler, and I, Panda Fowler, never asked to be part of a fight that spanned parallel universes and determined the balance of good and evil for all free and unfree creatures. It made me shiver thinking about our nemesis standing mere feet from where I sat and using lightning-like energy to try to kill us. My ankle twitched at the memory. I wouldn't be surprised if Brutus was dreaming about the sizzling charge that deflected off my GPS ankle bracelet and torched him. We were both recovering. When these unwelcome memories invaded my mind, my mood darkened and a shiver ran down my spine. It wasn't just these memories. I sensed something bad was about to happen and my insecurities kicked in. It wasn't easy living in the midst of magical beings and feeling so inadequate. Teach me magic. The words rushed out of my mouth before I even had a chance to think about them. Elsa must have felt my change in mood and responded kindly. We don't have much call for magic in Maryville, and you have Eck. I pictured her little blonde husband, and me for spells and such, if and when trouble happens. And you know, Liebchen, you're not supposed to use magic outside of the Hercynian garden, just because you happen to be bored. I know, I sighed and twirled my unruly brown hair. It was harder to stay home and heal than I'd imagined. A new thought zinged through my mind. Spells. Are you a witch? Elsa's response was sharp. Panda, drop it. I wouldn't have been so frustrated if I weren't stuck at home. My ankle injury was stubbornly refusing to heal completely. I did get to work a little with tax clients on Zoom, but I missed sitting across the desk from them at Fowler Tax Service. Truth be told, though, they really didn't need me right now. My relief tax preparer from a temp agency was doing fine. Eck also popped in to check on the business when he wasn't at Taggart's Emporium. I was in self-pity mode due to being out of my routine. The living room grandmother clock ticked as I traced the patterns on my Formica tabletop with my index finger. Elsa, if you teach me magic, I'll show you how to do taxes. My eyes flashed with emphasis, and I leaned back in the aluminum-framed chair, which creaked. Elsa chuckled and responded, Panda, knowing how to do taxes is not the selling point you think it is. Besides, Eck already knows taxes. She paused as if struck by an idea. In fact, maybe that's why I married him. It took me a second to realize she was joking. Elsa didn't usually joke. She was actually quite funny with her German deadpan delivery. We both cackled. You should do stand-up. I tipped the chair back dangerously, then leaned forward, not wanting to add another injury. Elsa returned to cleaning off the kitchen countertop, standing on a little stool to reach the new granite. A light brown lock of her hair escaped the braid, and I watched her brush the strands back with her free hand. I didn't know Elsa's true age, and it seemed rude now to ask her after all this time together. Sometimes she seemed so young, and other times, like now, her rosy face held a certain maturity, giving off a motherly vibe. How long do elves live anyway? I asked myself. As if she heard my nonstop thoughts, Elsa faced me again. Her teeth, white, sparkled as she grinned, gesturing to me with a dish towel in hand. And don't forget, you already have your own magic. Work on that. You hear, Elsa, Brutus? I scoffed. I have my own magic. Sure didn't feel like it when we got attacked. I ticked off bullet points on my fingers. I don't fly like my wife, had no lightning coming from my hands like you know who. Me and Brutus here were just lucky the ravens came and chased Wolfram off. Elsa appeared to have stopped listening. I drummed my fingers again on the formica table and felt sorry for myself. Elsa continued to clean and shine the new granite countertop. I didn't think it looked dirty at all. Is your coping mechanism cleaning? I asked sarcastically. In her sweet German accent, she replied simply, Cleanliness is good. The cupboards and appliances on the counter shone from her polishing. I'm coping fine. Uh-huh. She wasn't fooling me. Eck and Elsa may be expert guardians, but they were affected by the constant trouble, too. Brutus made a squeaky, yawning sound and stretched. Ever since his brush with death, he was acting like an old man and slept a lot. A beam of sunlight bathed his golden-spotted fur, which had mostly grown back after his courageous defense of his mama. We all loved him so much. He was a beefy Bengal cat, but he'd lost some weight and still sported a worrisome spot on his chest that hadn't healed. The warm sunbeam coming through the window and onto him in his soft bed must have felt soothing. The kitchen was a tad chilly. My heart melted as he rolled on his back, 4 paws up, curling toward the light. I wished I could crawl in his bed with him. My jeans and t-shirt weren't warm enough. I reached down to scratch Brutus's ears, but was rewarded with a weak headbutt before he closed his eyes again. A cool fall breeze blew through the open top of the Dutch door, and I saw leaves in the backyard spin in a circle due to a whirly gust. It made me shiver from the temperature drop, and I thought about going upstairs for a sweatshirt. Sure is a cold fall. Bugging Elsa about magic wasn't new. After our many adventures together, it was clear my own magical abilities paled next to Elsa's and others in our immediate circle. Along with some impressive cooking skills, Elsa had flower magic. She could fill a room with certain floral scents and actually influence people's moods. She also did this mumbling incantation thing that could pause a combatant mid-attack. It came in handy this year more than once. Most recently, however, she had used her healing magic to save Brutus and me after Wolfram attacked us. Impressive. But my wife, Mitzi, as a half-griffin, has the coolest skill of all. She can fly. Now Elsa was polishing the toaster and still had her back to the dinette. Panda, things have settled down now. My Zauberbuch stays in the treehouse under lock and key. You aren't completely well yet either. And your magic may be stronger than you think. It was you who completed the compass pattern at St. Olaf's during our showdown against Lupus Imperium. She turned to me. Hang on to that. We still haven't figured out how ravens knew to come to our kitchen and chase Wolfram out. You were the only one there. Eck thinks you may have somehow summoned the ravens. I exhaled. Or maybe they're simply fickle. Haven't they changed sides before? Elsa set a frosty glass of lemonade in front of me. I glanced sideways and winced. Of course, the next-door neighbors. It may be time to fill them in a bit on what's been going on over here, but every time I mean to, they're off on another trip. They've been good to you both, I know. Or maybe if we don't stay here for my wife's birthday, any elf holes around here we can use to travel to some exotic place for the day? Someplace beautiful or famous. Mitzi would love that. Panda, Elsa said sharply. I put up my hands in surrender. Okay, Elsa was staring at Brutus. Panda, look at Brutus. What? My beloved pet was gasping for breath. Immediately, my ankle started hurting too, our twin injury. Oh my God, Brutus. Elsa went to Brutus's side and put her hand on his chest. Grab him and come on. She ran to the back door. I reached down and gently picked up the whole bed, wrapping up the cat. as tears sprang from my eyes. Call the vet. By the time I stood with the bed, Elsa was already out the Dutch door leading to her treehouse. Where are you going? Over her shoulder, Elsa yelled, Just follow me. Hurry. Clutching Brutus and his bed to my chest, I whispered, Hold on, baby. I didn't think. I followed Elsa at a fast limp and wondered how I would navigate the ladder that led up to Elsa and X's treehouse with my bum ankle and leg. But instead of climbing the ladder, Elsa went to the right of the tree trunk and disappeared into the thistle bushes. This immediately sparked a memory of being in the Black Forest of Germany months ago. Elsa had led Juniper and me to a magically concealed entrance to the Hercynian garden. Was this another one of those? The old oak tree predated our home on Thistle Drive by almost 100 years. Did Elsa and Eck hollow out a trunk to make an entrance? It was a brilliant place for a camouflage door, as the base of the tree was wide and gnarly. The thistle bushes were planted close around the base like a collar on a shirt, and the sight of them alone kept folks from walking up to the tree directly. Yes, it must be a magical entrance. The wind picked up, and I adjusted my hold on the bed to keep Brutus warm. Even though somewhat panicked, I had to hand it to Eck and Elsa for being so clever. I was amazed neither Mitzi nor I had any idea we had an elf hole literally in our own backyard. Brutus's whole body shivered against my chest, which focused me. Was that a seizure? Elsa's head appeared through the bushes, and she said urgently, Enter here and watch your step. There are stairs. She disappeared again, leaving the unbroken Scottish thistles swaying in the breeze.
That was awesome. Great job, Reba. Nice introduction too to Panda and Brutus, a bit of giving us some idea of what happened from the last book and what's going on. Poor Brutus, hopefully he'll be okay. And so exciting that this is coming out next week. So it's on pre-order right now.
It is on pre-order, and I have to thank my publisher, Launch Point Press, for all the mentorship. I love you guys, and I want to thank Desert Palm Press too for making today happen.
Absolutely. And you're certainly welcome from Launch Point Press. And I know DPP also, they provide great opportunities for us to showcase wonderful authors like you. So thank you for sharing with us. So we have a few minutes left, but first I just want to say how wonderful were all these authors today. I mean, we got a nice variety here of action and adventure and mystery and some paranormal, some magic. So we got a little bit of everything today. And I know that those who are watching are going to be very interested in reading what you've presented to us today and waiting for those books, those work in progresses. Get going, writers. We want them done so that they can read them. So thank you for sharing with us today. That was awesome. And since we have a few minutes left, I have a couple of questions. I think what I'll do, though, is I'll ask the first one. We'll just have a couple of people answer, and then we'll go on to the other one. So the first question I had was, many writers have a day job or side hustle. If that applies to you, tell us what it is and whether you use that knowledge when writing. So who wants to volunteer to answer that? Okay, Ellen, go ahead.
I'll go. So my side hustle is I'm an attorney. I think Reba and I share that, as does, I think, Jody, maybe.
And also EJ.
And EJ. So
Yeah.
we're amongst friends here. I work for a nonprofit that does low-income representation. So I'm very happy with that.
And how do you bring that into your books?
I bring it into my stories because I get a lot of my ideas from people that I interact with, not necessarily clients, but people that I come into contact with on a semi-regular basis, and I just start getting ideas from them.
Yeah, I'm sure you have some wild stories too.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing. Anyone else want to answer that question for us? Go ahead, Caren.
I was a physical therapist for about 32 years, and I retired about a year and a half ago. I still teach anatomy, but I'm no longer practicing. But that much time dealing with people who are recovering from injuries and illnesses that have, in some cases, permanently changed their lifestyle or the way they perceive themselves in terms of body image, things like that. I mean, there's just so much depth and wealth of human pathos to draw from when you're dealing with people who are, in a kind of a vulnerable state like that. So I've been able to pull in a lot of that to bring those elements into my stories.
Oh, excellent. Thanks for sharing. And now the question I know you all want to answer. If you were a sandwich, which one would you be and why? I know you all want to answer this. Go ahead, Jane.
So this will be sort of a Southern California reference. And if you've spent any time in Southern California, you know about In-N-Out Burger.
Yes.
So I would be an In-N-Out Burger. And the reason is that they're family owned, they are not franchised, they seek perfection, and they do have the best hamburger in the world. And I'm always striving to do that.
Nice. Thank you, Jane. Who else wants to answer that? Reba?
Oh, let's see. I would have to be a ham sandwich.
Ham sandwich.
Rebecca Birmingham. That is
Nice.
and I've been told I can be a little dramatic. I'm a moon child. Here we are. So.
Awesome. Ellen, how about you?
I'm going to be total New Yorker because that's my personality, which is why I read very fast. And I'm going to go for 2 scrambled eggs on a roll with bacon, and it has to be a Kaiser roll, not just any roll.
Sounds good.
That sounds very New Yorkish.
It's very New Yorkish. You can't get a decent one outside of New York.
There you go. And
Same
EJ,
thing with
what about,
dog.
yeah. EJ, what about you?
So I decided that if I'm going to be a sandwich, it needs to be one with as many ingredients as possible because I've always got so much going on at one time. So there's a sandwich that I had actually never heard of, nor have I ever seen, called a pizza bianca. I found this online. It has 52 ingredients.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's kind of hard to imagine. There's a picture of one. It's kind of insane. So that would be me because I've always got my fingers in about 800 things at the same time. I'm just busy all the time. Not bad for somebody who's retired, but
right.
It seems like I don't know how I always say, I don't know how I ever found time to work. So I would be a sandwich with 52 ingredients.
Nice. And Caren, how about you?
I thought a lot about this, and I think I would probably have to be a Braunschweiger sandwich.
Oh, that sounds
Nice.
good.
Well, it's one of those things you have to kind of like try it maybe without knowing what it really is, and then you decide you like it and it's okay. But people are always telling me I look so intense. I think I had permanent frown lines by the time I was 10, and they were always intimidated by me. And then once they get to know me, I'm not so bad. So I figured Braunschweiger.
Well, I can attest to that. You're not so bad, Caren. All right. Well, we've used all our time up, I'm sad to say. But thank you all for being here today. For those watching, our next live stream will be the last one of the year, Thursday, December 14th. Same time, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. And you'll hear from 2 authors, one from Desert Palm Press and the other from Launch Point Press. It will be Ray Magden from Desert Palm Press and myself from Launch Point Press. So I hope that you'll join us. We'll be reading an excerpt and answering some questions. Thanks to everyone for coming here today, for watching, and I hope we'll see you again.